Hi, this is Simon Obsdale and welcome to another tutorial for Resolve Fusion, and today we're going to be taking a look at this magical transformation effect. Now this is quite nice because obviously the transformation follows the contours of the 3D scene. Now this is a scene that I created in Blender and rendered out as a multi-layer EXR, but at the end I will show you that you can also use this technique perfectly well with a 3D scene that you built in Fusion itself. So anyway, let's take a look. Okay, so here we are in Blender and I've just made this crazy scene that'll show off the technique. And the one thing I made sure to do was to turn on position here in the passes, and we're going to be exporting as an OpenEXR multi-layer, and that's going to give us the position pass to be able to use in Fusion. So let's switch back over to Resolve. So here we are in Resolve. I've come to the media storage. I'm just going to bring in this render here, and this is what it looks like with a camera move. So then I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a timeline out of it, create timeline using selected clips. Open up the timeline. Let's come to the Fusion page. The first thing I'm going to do is just going to add a gamut tool like that. And what we can do here is switch the output space to Rec 709. And that's just going to make it look like we want it to look rather than the linear OpenEXR. Okay, so what we need to do is to come over to the media in and the channels. So you can see we've got our combined red, green, blue and alpha. And what we're going to do is we're going to access the XYZ position. So let's just populate those with their relevant values from the multi-layer render. So then if we look at the media in over here and we look at channels, position X gives us the left-right position of the scene. Position Y, rather confusingly, gives us the front-back because of the way Blender works as against the way Fusion works. And the Z position is the up-down, again, because that's flipped in relation to what we're used to. So I'm going to just quickly add a channel booleans like this. I'm going to pipe the media in to the channel booleans. And if you remember, what we actually wanted was the Y position in order to get the front back. So I'm going to copy that into the red channel for the channel booleans like this. So now if we look at the channel booleans, so there you go. I'm looking at the red channel and you can see we've got this front back positional information. And what we need to do now is we need to normalize it, because I don't know whether you can see. If you look down here while I hover over the image, you can see that the red channel, which is our back and front position, has got a value of -13, -14 down here at the front, and at the back it's got a value of 55. And what we actually need to do in order to be able to leverage this is to normalize this to the 0 to 1 range. So we're going to do that with a custom tool like this. And over here in the channels, I'm going to type the following expression. So open brackets, R1 minus N1 close brackets divided by open brackets, N2 minus N1 close brackets. So now if we look at this custom tool, it's looking a bit manky, but what we need to do is just to set up those values. So for the number 1, I'm going to have -14, and for number 2, I'm going to have 55. And those are the values that we decided were the front and back of the image. So what we're also going to do is going to modify that expression just a little bit by adding N3 to the end. So at the end, add plus N3. And then if I adjust N3, you can see that I can move that position backwards and forwards like that. Now we don't want this full range here. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to add a brightness contrast after that. And I'm just going to set these low and high values. So I'm going to go with 0.3 for the low and 0.31 for the high. And if we look at that, we get now, I just need to adjust my N3 value. You can see that the line is much more defined. And you can see very nicely how it's following the contours of my 3D objects. So then what we can very simply do is we can add a brightness contrast in here, drop it in there like that, And we can take this brightness contrast and we can use it as an effect mask for this one here. So with this one, I'm just going to take out all the saturation, and I'm also just going to reduce the gain down like that, I think, and maybe increase the lift, maybe bring that gain down even more. So we've just got this sort of very sort of washed out grey look like that. You can do whatever you want with it, but that's what I want to do. I want to go from this washed out grey to full colour. So I'm going to take this brightness contrast and I'm going to pipe it into the effect mask input of this one here. And I'm going to come over to settings. And if you remember, we were using the reg channel. So if I use the reg channel, you can now see that we've got grey in the background and colour in the foreground. And if we come back to our custom tool here and we move our N3 slider, we've got this lovely wipe between colour and grey. So let's just quickly set up an animation. I'm going to come to the first frame. Let's keyframe that. It's roughly 0.304 there. Going to come forward to the end and make sure that everything is now coloured. And that's going to give us this animation like that. So that's pretty simply done. But what I actually want to do is I want to have a nice edge to this. That's a kind of sparkling and boiling. So what I'm going to do, just very quickly, I'm going to call this brightness contrast to BC because it's going to make my life a lot easier if I do that. And then I'm going to copy it, Command C, and then paste it like that. And I'm going to take this into there. So we've got our output of our custom tool going into these two brightness contrasts. So with this one, I'm going to link it to the first one. So the second one here. I'm going to link the low and the high using expressions. So right click on the low, add an expression. And because I've renamed that, I can type bc.low minus 0.01 like that. And then for the high, again, add an expression. This time we're going to do bc.high plus 0.01. So we're linking to the original with a bit of an offset on the low and the high like that. So then I'm going to invert this brightness contrast with the invert color tool. I think this has only popped up recently. I used to have to make a macro for this. So it's just going to flip the black and white like so. Then what we want is a custom tool like this. And we want to take this brightness contrast into the custom tool as well, like so. And this custom tool, we're going to come over to the channels. And what we're going to type in the red field is min, open brackets, R1, comma, R2, close brackets. And if we look at the result of that, you can see that now we've got this fine line here that's following the transition. So what I'm going to do here is I want to roughen up that line that we've got. So I'm going to first of all add a displace, this 2D displace, and I'm going to add a fast noise, and I'm going to take that into the displace foreground like that. So let's have a look at the displace. So I want to turn this offset down to -0.5, and I want to come over to my fast noise. I'm going to set this contrast, I think, to 1.5, and I'm going to set the scale all the way up to 50. And you can see over here now that we've got this nice jagged edge like that. So then we can take this displace, just make ourselves some space here. So after this brightness contrast, I'm going to add a soft glow. And obviously what we want to do is we want to mask this soft glow. So we're going to use our displace as the effect mask input. We need to come to the settings for the soft glow, and we need to choose red for the channel. And you can probably see what's going on there. I'm just going to come back to the soft glow controls, crank the gain all the way up to 5. Now, if we look at what's happening here, it's all a bit too sharp. And ideally what I want to be able to do is to blur that. So I'm going to show you what happens if we just add a blur after that displace. So drop a blur in there, and let's increase the blur size to, I don't know, 6. And you see we're getting this shrinkage, and we don't want that at all. And that's because we've got some out of range values on our displace here. So what I'm going to do is add a brightness contrast after the displace, and I'm going to clip the black. And you see when I do that, that problem goes away. So we're just clipping those blacks so they don't go below 0. And let's also clip the whites just for safety while we're at it. We don't actually need to do that, but might as well. So that's looking quite good. What I also want to do is come over to the soft glow and just adjust the color. Let's just crank up the blue like that. So we've got this nice blue in there. Then I want to make a little bit of space after the soft glow, and I want to add a merge. And I'm going to take my fast noise and add it to the input of the merge like that. I'm going to set the apply mode to color dodge, and I want to use my blur output again as the effect mask for the merge. Bring that in there, select the merge, come to settings, select the channel and choose red. And then I'm just going to come back to my fast noise and color 2, and I'm going to take out some of that blue. So we've got a nice contrast with our blue glow. It's looking like that. And then we are getting this. And I think that's probably as much as I'm going to show you in this tutorial. But you can see that it's a pretty nice effect, pretty simply done. And there's lots you could probably add in here to finesse it. And a few things I want to point out is that obviously with our channel booleans here, we could actually select a completely different direction. So if we were to select the X position here instead of the Y that we were using, you'll see that we're getting a wipe from left to right because that's the X position of our render. Similarly, if we chose the Z position, we'd get this up-down effect like that. So lots of options there. You could probably combine those in different ways to get different directions as well if you want to do a little bit of maths on those different position values. And the other point I want to make is that although here I've used a render from Blender, we could actually do this with a 3D scene that we'd made in Fusion. So just to demonstrate that, I've got a very basic 3D scene set up here with some simple Fusion primitives. I've got my 3D renderer here, and I'm going to come to output channels, and what we need to do to be able to access those positions is to turn on world position. And now if I add a channel booleans after that, and we for example copy, well, let's take a look at it, let's copy to the red channel the X position and take a look at the red channel. You can see we've got the left right there. The Y position is the up down. Don't forget that this is the standard Fusion coordinates, and the Z position is front back in the normal way. So as you can see, very, very simple. From there on in, the process is exactly the same. Instead of using a render from another application, we're using a render from within Fusion, and we're using these output channels to access the world position. So anyway, I hope that's been useful and you have fun playing with this. Thanks very much indeed for watching, and I'll see you again soon.